I want to ask you about within the community.
Mhm.
You talked to me previously about um, the concept of understanding where a culture sits based on their words for things, things that include gender, um, race, um, and other, I guess, cultural qualifiers and things that make us a society.
Right.
Where I want to talk about these terms in Gullah language and culture, and perhaps how they evolved over time, and maybe how they're continuing to evolve.
Right. One of the things, I was having a conversation with my students about um, being able to execute the language in a contemporary context, like how to use it now. Um, my focus in teaching the language is in traditional Gullah, um, it's the way that maybe your grandmother or great grandmother would have sounded. Um, Not so much contemporary Geechee, like contemporary Gullah, which would be Geechee, but that is also included. But to make it make sense in language, you'll have your acrolec, mesolec, basilec. And traditionally, what that represents is the acrolec would be the most assimilated, sort of most educated form of a language. So if you're speaking a Creole, it would be let's say you're speaking an Afro-Indigenous Creole, English-based Creole, and English is the lexifier. It is the one that is the language that is the foundation of it. It's the most anglicized version of that Creole,
Okay.
closest to English. Okay. Mesolek would be the combination of the two, like the other African indigenous languages mixed in with English, kind of like the Spanglish sort of thing, but it's more so using um, your own rules mixed in with a lot of the English rules. So, for example, but before I give you an example, and Basilek would be the furthest away from the anglicized form.
Okay.
Okay, and but Basilek is also considered the least educated. It's considered the least sophisticated, the least refined. Well, in my class, it's the other way around, where the elementary version of Gullah would be the most anglicized. It's the one that is the least complex, the least foreign from the English that you already speak, because it's not a complex form of the language as is. It's more anglicized. The intermediate would be the Mesolek. And the advanced would be the language in my class that in another class would be considered rudimentary. In an English class, my advance would be considered um, would be stigmatized as not prestigious. Whereas in my class, the people in McCrackty like this, that's the prestige. This the prestige the accent in my class. And so it's the opposite. Um, and one of the things that I try to impress upon them is that the language is very fluid. It sounds different. Even native speakers speak it differently with one another.
Hmm.
I ain't gonna sound the same way when I talk to my mom is the same way I talk to one of my friend them. And then if I got me a little a little dip, a little mix, I can talk to them the same way I can talk to my boy. So we all sound different. The same way you sound different when you talk to your pastor, and then when you talking to your boss or your coworker,
Hmm.
um, you don't sound the same. And so we constantly code switching and changing the way that we sound, even when we stay in the language, even when we stay in the accent. And that's important because it allows us to be able to grow the language, but then hold on to our roots at the same time. What I try to do with the language and impress upon people, people who decide to, and to some degree, I guess it's a decision for people who are either trying to come back home. Maybe you used to sound that way, but you've been so used to code switching that you don't swap out your language and you don't sound that way. And it might even some people even have imposter syndrome when they try to use their accent again. It don't feel natural no more. And And I've had conversation with them, with people like that. They said they just can't do it.
Mm.
In their mind, they just keep hearing the corrections that they've been getting all them years. And so what I try to do is just bring in some fundamental things, is impressing upon people the importance of preserving the old language, but growing the language that you have as is. You don't have to, it don't have to be either or. But you can do both. Unless you out here talking to your grandmama the way you talk to, or June Buck from down the street. Unless you're doing that. I mean, I don't roll like that, but yeah, everybody different. But being able to do that is what's important, for me. But I also think that it also shows the words and phrases in your language shows me who you've been in contact with, a lot of what your values are, a lot of what your, ethics are. Like, say, for example, I think I told you this before, when I was talking to a friend of mine who speaks an indigenous language, and I asked them, what is their word for the N word? And they say, we don't have one. Like, culturally, we don't have beef with Black people. Like,
Right.
we don't see you that way. So we don't have an N word. Like, our N word would be the N word. We would have to actually co-opt it or borrow that word from outside of our language, because our traditional language doesn't have that.
Mm.
And so when you listen to, there's a reason, okay, if you go someplace to a remote island and they use the word Wi-Fi, you would assume, oh, they must mean something different.
Yeah.
Wi-Fi must mean something other than, it can't mean it like internet. Ain't no internet here. Like, but just hold up now. Where y'all get Wi-Fi from? Why are these people talking about, PlayStation 5? Like, hold up now. Y'all got PlayStations? The only way they would have that in their language is if they had some kind of contact with it. Like, where did you get that from?
Mm.
And so that's, language does that. Like, language exposes a lot of, like, it's your history. It's a time capsule in a sense that lets people know who you've been around, who you've been talking to. We are doing, you got a word for that, and so that's, language will show that. And so in Gullah Geechee, as one of the contemporary issues or social issues, when people talk about gender neutrality and non-binary and things like that, and I'll hear sometimes, Gullah Geechee people like, oh, I won't get mixed up in all that foolishness data. Ain't nobody, we ain't got no mess like that. Your mommy say he's a gal, he's a man, he's a gal or whatever. Like, hold up, stop right there. That's a lie, because we always had gender neutral terms.
Mm-hmm.
We always did. And it's E. E is everything in Gullah.
Mm-hmm.
E is a person, a place, a thing, an event, a male, a female. It could be a baby, a dog, a cat. If somebody say, did you get your son? Will you get your son for your birthday? Oh, you get a puppy. A puppy? What a puppy at? E in there with him.
Mm.
So in that sentence, if I say, E get a puppy for your birthday, well, what a puppy at? E in there with him. The puppy is in there with my kid, with him, with my son. But just a second ago, you said E get a puppy. So was E your son a second ago? And now E becomes the puppy in the very next sentence?
Mm.
Well, how was the birthday party? Even good. Now E is the birthday party. You see what I'm saying? And so in that sentence, we utilize E for whatever we need it to be in that moment. And that includes gender. He getting married, he getting married at the end of the week. Who are you marrying? And now you can decide E would be he. And let's say he's marrying Sheila, and I say, who are you marrying? Sheila, man, He work at he work at the grocery store.
Okay.
And so now he went from being the groom to being the bride,
Right.
because now I'm referring to the bride as he work at the grocery store. I don't have to say she, and you still know who I mean. And so when you start asking yourself, why was it? Because clearly we're learning English, and in English they have he and she.
Mm-hmm.
So why are these people all these generations later still using e for he, she, it, them, they, etc., etc.? Why didn't we just roll with he and she?
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's not to say that we don't use he and she. We do. Um, but there's a reason that we do hold space for certain phrases, because it's an indication of where we were culturally in regards of how we perceive these roles.
Right.
And so you see a lot of people in Western culture, or in, you know, the more, anglicized settings, European anglicized settings, who will insist that, a woman's place is in the kitchen, a woman do all the cooking. Except if you go to a Gullah Geechee gathering,
Mm-hmm.
you'll see the man in the barbecue pit, the
Right.
man cooking crab and oyster, the man in the kitchen cooking his, whatever his prize dish or whatever. If you jackleg Gullah Geechee man, if you can't burn something up in the kitchen, I mean, you gotta do something. You gotta bring something more than mouth to the table when it comes to dinner time. So no, no, no. Like culturally, we don't do that.
Right.
You got to do something, man. Grow something, hunt something, do something. And so culturally, a lot of those traditional roles. I mean, again, we are being conditioned in a white power structure that conditioned us with a lot of their values and ethics, and we've adopted a lot of it. But if you take a look at the core of our community, there's a lot of gender neutral things that aren't really specifically male or female. Growing up, if there was a snake in a hen house or something that needed to get got or whatever, my mama just as quick to get the shotgun as anybody else.
Mm.
You go get the shotgun. My mama will fish to this very day. My mama go fishing. You know what I'm saying? And so you ain't just waiting around for no man to go get you some fish. You go get the fish yourself. And she'd be right around the house. If it come down to sewing something, bully on chicken coop. If daddy would work, sometime all of 12, 14 or whatever hours a day, and mama needs something built, she'll bully herself.
Mm-hmm.
And he good too. I mean, and like no rig up, what I'm saying, or like she's all kind of hack him a how, and not like that. He laughs too.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just things that you don't have the luxury and the privilege to sit around um adapting alien ethics that don't serve you in alignment with your culture. And
Right.
that's the same thing, not only with your traditions and your skills, but also with your language.
Mm-hmm.
Is be careful what you adopt and put in your language that ain't really a reflection of your values or your ethics, because you will mess around and start fervently defending something as your own that don't even belong to you.
Mm.
And that happens frequently.
It does. And this is